want to start with the page of, that Mark gave us in the front pocket of where we are at we're currently at 5.46% increase. So we did this last year, we sort of have this table to show us, you know, how much we need to find, to get down to whatever number looks good.
What is the number for revenue or expenditure restraint? What is the percentage that we need to get to, or the number?
We can manage our expenditure restraint, you know, again, there's enough maneuverability within our budgeting system to manage that.
I understand, but if we didn't have that, didn't you say last time it was about 300,000?
About 300,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Without-
so, I guess we'll just go through and, let's start the way we did last year. If you have questions, we'll start with any questions and then any, discussion. And then we can talk about referring things and putting things on the list.
Are we starting general fund, or?
Yeah, we just said, yeah, we're starting with general fund.
Trustee Menta, then, if we're going pretty much through departments, there are some fairly small capital items that relate to some of our administrative departments. We touch those at the same time we're on that department budget as well.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Is there anything on revenues? Did anyone have questions on general fund revenues? That's page 17.
Yes, if you give me 1 second. I have questions before that, but let's just, want to go to 17? Okay.
We covered that overview last time, so I'd like to just get into the. Okay, any questions on revenue projection?
Yeah, my only one was expenditures, general government is going up 10%, and I'm assuming that we'll get into that as we go?
Yeah, that'll be fairly apparent as we go through each department, and then they just add.
Okay, all right, so let's start with general fund, village board.
And just to follow up on that, pages 22 is kind of like department by department
Okay.
expenditure numbers.
So for pilot water, that's payment in lieu of taxes, correct?
That's correct.
Ours went 12%. Is there a new nonprofit?
Well, the pilot revenues are a function of asset values and property tax rates.
Oh, okay.
So we have been putting some assets in, and property tax rates have been going up. So that's just a reflection of both of those impacts.
But property taxes went 2.9%. Okay.
Well, but this is a backwards look for the PSC. So we look at the 2019 tax rates. I'd have to double check, but I've done my worksheets and verified that that's within the best I can estimate right now until I get all the final
It's
data.
more than just taxes, it's like assets, okay.
Yeah, it's asset value times the tax rate. That's how that's, there's some exclusions to that for the under state statute for pilots, but.
Okay, the unlearning racism training, do we have, where did that number come from?
That was the number that was discussed as we went through the initiative process, based upon estimates for proceeding with those components of the initiative.
But the YWCA is unable to do it, correct?
They're unable to lead our internal staff team, but a portion of that is also budgeted for staff and our board members to take the class.
And this is
So
for
it's-
staff, board members, and any members, any commission members, correct?
Correct, and HRC, members of the HRC.
Yeah, well, they're one of the commission. Okay.
What about, are we flipping back and forth because to the detail?
Just,
No.
if we could, just like state what page we're on, just so everyone can follow at the same
Page
spot.
37, 38.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you skipped all over this part, okay,
Yeah, that
sorry
was-
about that, all right. All right, I have a question about contingency, so so it went up to, projected for 2019, that's what I usually use is what we actually spend, not budget to budget. It says 5,000, so why do we raise it back up to 10,000?
Well, if you look at the trends, 10,000 seems to be about an average. It's really, it's it's a relatively non-token dollar amount that gives the board the flexibility to engage in things like, solar survey studies and things like that that aren't contemplated in advance of the budget. So, that's where that number comes in. It's nothing super magical about it. It's just
I
the
just
number
feel-
we're using.
Do you wanna put that on the list to
Yeah.
reduce that?
Just in
Okay.
case we need to add up a bunch of different.
Okay, any other questions on Jessica?
Yeah, so
Yes.
the, I have two questions, if that's okay.
The budget's on, the finance department, it's posted, in department budgets, 2020 proposals. And these page numbers are the same that's on the online version.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I just have two questions. One is about the 4th of July festivities, so based on, I guess where was the difference
It's in revenue.
from, got it. Okay, and then, so the unlearning racism, I know, and maybe this is something that we'll discuss, but I feel really strongly about that training, but I also feel really strongly about getting ourselves to at least a 2% budget increase. And $6,500 is a pretty hefty cost for a training. So, I don't know if who's starting the list? or
Do you know what the per participant amount is for that
Well,
course?
it accommodates for 4 people to attend, but that's just one portion of it, it's split into thirds. So a portion of it's to find a facilitator who can coordinate our internal group and kind of start the process with it. A portion of it, so it's about $500 per person for the class, and there's an estimate of 4 that we use for purposes of the initiative. And then the second component, I need to dive back into your initiative sheet again.
Yeah, it's all right.
But it was about
Yeah,
divided into.
well, I know that this is I think somewhat of a placeholder, but, I'm wondering if maybe there's some other research that we could do and maybe find some way to get that number down. I just think, about even last year, some of the things that we had to cut, that were pretty needed. And this is an important training, but I'm just wondering if there's some way that we can get that cost down.
Go ahead.
I have the same question.
Yeah, I wanna make and I agree, I think it's an important thing that we do for the community, I fully support it. As long as, I wanna make sure we do it in some form, I don't wanna lose this, because I think it's something that, we need to engage in. But I am open to, determining whether we can do it a little more cost effectively. But again, I wanna make sure that we keep it as something that we're supporting and doing, so.
Well, why don't we put it on the list and we can come back to it?
Yeah.
And does committee still have 500 allocated to them in this budget? If so, maybe we can utilize some of that money,
That's in, I think, the list of measures.
or even the board's contingency, for contingency. I have a question about, 2 things. One is, and one's a question and one's a proposal, but one is the village board professional education, and I'm sure that has something to do with me, so I wanna know, but it went up a ton?
That's the,
Is that
online
right?
racism.
No other reason?
That's a predominant reason, yeah.
Okay, but I just saw that, there's board conferences, and then there's the league convention. I don't know why there's 2,000 in the conferences. Was that new?
No,
Do we use that every year?
I would have to review
Because I,
past, I think that one of the conferences tend to come up at the very end of the year, November, December. And that's up to board participation on who goes with
I
that.
get that, but if you look at the trend as you've been doing, right, it's literally under $5,000, it's 2,500, and we have 9,500, so I'm fine as a board member, reducing this to match the last 3 years of actuals, or a little more, even 5,000 or 4.
Well, again, the 6,500 increase is
Oh.
due to the unlearning racism initiative
Okay.
from the board.
I see what you're saying. So if there's any
Yeah.
way to reduce that, if we don't use that in the actual show it, could you let me know, or let us know?
At your discretion, absolutely.
And then my proposal was, I would like to discuss, increasing wages for the board members.
The per diem.
Per diem, if that's the best way to do it, of course, the manager could research it or but yes. So giving a per diem for per meeting, I surveyed the League of Wisconsin municipality, members at the October meeting, the conference, and, most all, I'd say 98% get per diems and above their salary, which is much more than ours from 1971.
They get paid per meeting that they attend?
They get both, so they get I get 1,500, you guys get 1,000, for the year. And then they get more than that, but most of them, but regardless, they also get a per diem, that used to be 50 and now it's 70 per meeting, but, so that supplements it for your, because we don't get gas or babysitting or anything like that. And so we did that in Milwaukee as well, even for our commissioners, for planning commissioners. I'm not saying we do it for our committee members, but for the board, it would be one option.
I would.
This is Mike. I would add, you could add it to the list. I would not support increasing it, any additional pay for the trustees, which is a quasi-volunteer position.
Right, and the only reason I mention that is it's really hard on young, to attract and to recruit for board members, young or professional, young professionals onto our board, because if you look at history, we can, $1,000 isn't enough to pay for even gas for the year, or babysitting, or taking time off work. So we haven't raised anything since 71, even the cost of living, but all our employees get that. So 71 to 2020 is a long period of time where our pay is not
I would support looking at it, and certainly a per diem would be, because I don't know that the public realizes that for many meetings we're here 5 hours.
Right.
And that's just the board meeting. And there's other committee meetings that we go to and meetings we go to. I mean, to me, because I do work part-time, this is like a quarter-time job.
Yeah.
And after, 5 years of doing it, I think, I'm starting to feel like, wow, there's other things time-wise that, I could be doing. So it certainly wouldn't be anywhere near an hourly rate that most of us would get, but it would be some compensation for the many hours we put in, so I'd support it. Go ahead.
And I would support looking at it as well. I don't know that I'll ultimately support it at the end of the day, but I think a lot of things that President Rosick is saying make sense. I'd want to see kind of the total impact, not being able to do it in my
Yeah.
head, but it's maybe something we can take a look at.
Mark?
I certainly put that on the list with just a brief announcement. My recollection that the last time this came up at a board meeting, the city attorney reflected that can only be phased in at changes of election officials.
Because I think that's salary, I'm not sure per diem
So
necessarily.
let me review that with him as well, if you'd
Okay.
like to look at that a little bit more thoroughly.
I just wanted to note that the difference between revenue and cost for 4th of July projected is $4,000, but we have budgeted $5,000. So, that's essentially the village's subsidy to the 4th of July.
Do we need it?
I'd be supporting putting that back to 4,000.
Me too.
So if you look in 2019 projected, and it says the cost was $26,500 and the donations were $22,500. So what we ended up paying was the 4,000 difference, but we have budgeted.
Is that the candy? I'm joking.
But we budgeted 5,000. Yeah.
That's a net outcome of this year's event, but we do pay $5,000 to the program event coordinator. So when donations exceed Tyler, you wanna pick up on that?
It's
Am I
not
misstating that?
not quite 5,000. We pay her, I think right now it's like 3,200 or something like that. But yeah, we do up to a $5,000 subsidy.
Okay,
And then based on donations, that makes, we have up to the $5,000 of a cushion. So this year we needed 4 of the $5,000.
I would be willing to bring it down, because even, you just have to raise more money, right? If, you don't make it, you still have to pay your coordinator $3,200.
all right, I'll add that to the list.
Okay. Anything else on village board? No? All right. Let's move on to municipal board.
Page 40 and 41.
So the reason I asked for the court history on court fines and fees is that last year we were asked to approve debt collection which I recall trustee Maher and I had some reservations about, and TRIP, and let's see, court fines. And we were told what, there was so, $2 million in outstanding debt, and how much money we were gonna make on this.
8,000 basically, between actual and projected.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't, I'm just questioning whether that actually was realized. Cause it's looking like, yeah, we're gonna make less than 8,000 more.
Oh, I guess that was
And-
current,
and
for
the-
collections, what is it, 30?
The projected 2019 is about 8,000 more than 18. And, but how much more are we paying for software? I mean, I just think we need to examine when, we either need to, I would like a little more detailed understanding of what's been happening with these fines and why we haven't seen a big bump. Yeah,
Well, if you look on page 40, the second line is actually the collections line item,
Was it
Yes.
30?
and we're projecting about $90,000 of revenues from that collections activity they initiated last year.
How
Okay.
much, 90?
Or-
Page 40.
in the third column
In the
over.
projected column,
You're saying 90s? I can't read my.
yeah, that's 90,000.
Okay, 90.
So that's been trending pretty good the first year. Staff feels that 20,000 in the proposed budget is the sustainable level of those activities over a period of time.
Why the second
Okay,
year
let's
though?
put, I would say bump that up to 30.
I would too. Why such a drastic change? I mean, did you collect all that you think you can really collect? Is the rest of it all bad debt? You know what I'm saying, like the easy collection?
Well, the 20,000 represents what we would call sustainable level. So if you bump numbers up that are ultimately gonna go away, you end up in that deficit unsustainable, and then you have to make up that gap at some future
That's
year.
a huge, I'm asking the question,
Yeah.
second year,
Yeah.
it's a 70 grand less collections you're budgeting for, so did we already collect all the debt that you think, the rest is
No.
all bad debt?
No, but it's from a